Welcome to the Bariatric Nutrition Coach Podcast, where we empower you with weight loss surgery, nutrition knowledge, mindset advice, and inspiration so you succeed in your weight and health journey. I'm your host, Jane Stoltz, and I am a bariatric dietitian who has helped over 1,300 people on their weight loss surgery journeys. I'm also a solo mum, lover of long walks while listening to podcasts, partial to a glass of wine, and the ocean is my happy place. Join me as I dive deep into bariatric nutrition and lifestyle topics and deliver them to you in bite-sized, palatable episodes every Monday. Now let's go. Hello and welcome to episode 45 of the Bariatric Nutrition Coach Podcast. And today's podcast I have titled What They Don't Tell You About Weight Loss Surgery. And a couple of weeks ago, I did a reel in Instagram, and it was a really simple reel of me driving, but I had this title on the reel, and then I had 4 points under the reel about different points of what I have gathered in my years of working in the area of bariatrics that it comes as a surprise for people in their bariatric journey. And I got such a big response to this reel that I knew I had really captured some really key points, key areas of struggle. And I wanted to talk about it more today because I think you're going to find it very valuable, even if you're in the early days after your surgery or even at any stage. So that is what I'm talking about today, is what they don't tell you about weight loss surgery. And it reminded me years and years ago of talking to friends about people having babies, and that comment, if they don't tell you about that, no one tells you about that. The things that don't get spoken about as much, things that may not be kind of clear that they can happen, and some of the struggles that can happen at different stages after having weight loss surgery. Often people's view or focus, which is very normal, is getting ready, qualifying, getting ready, getting all ducks in a row, having the surgery, because that's obviously a huge thing and it's nerve-wracking, and you put so much into even just having that procedure, physically, financially, emotionally, and that decision to have bariatric surgery. And then the focus can be very much around those early days and just, I'm going to get through those stages and then I'm going to get onto a normal diet, and I'm using air quotes here, normal diet, and that's where people focus. So we know that if you've had bariatric surgery, the journey is long and it's lifelong, and there's ups and downs, there's hills, there's valleys, there's trenches, there's mountains, there's cliffs, there's all of the things that come. And I want to talk more about what they don't tell you about having weight loss surgery. Before we dive into the episode, I would love to ask you to help support my podcast, this podcast, if you find value in this podcast. And I know you do. Well, many people do. I get feedback, I get lovely comments, and I don't advertise my podcast. It really is growing organically. So if you find value in my podcast, I would love you to share it with people that you feel could also value my podcast and the information and the topics I talk about. Check out this podcast, finding it really valuable, useful in my bariatric journey. If you do that, tag me. I will give you a personal shout out here in my podcast. And it would be wonderful because it helps people decide on what podcast to listen to. So thank you so much for listening just to this little request, and let's dive into this episode. What they don't tell you about weight loss surgery. So I've got 4 points to cover today. And the first one's a really big one, and probably out of all of the 4 points that I'm sharing, when I had this shared it as part of my reel, this point got the most comments and feedback, and it's that weight maintenance can be the hardest part. And as I was talking about a bit before, at the beginning of the podcast, often it is very understandable that when you are deciding to have bariatric surgery and heading towards that decision to have surgery, you're looking at that surgery date, you're looking at the early days after. But it can be really great to start gathering and listening to information about the longer term, because it is a long game, it is not a short game, so to speak. And I want to talk to you about some of the reasons why weight maintenance can be the hardest part. And it's not to say, oh my goodness, I'm having such a hard time in the early days, it's really hard. Oh, it's going to get even harder. It's not my intention. My intention is for you to be aware of the potholes and things that can be coming up in the future, but then just take one step at a time. It is one day at a time, 1 week at a time, and where you are is where you are. And if the sun's shining and everything's going fabulous, that's wonderful. But it's still healthy to know that you can have challenges. And it's just a normal kind of balanced view to say, even if I'm having a rough time now, I know it's going to get better as well. So both sides of that coin. So why can weight maintenance be the hardest part? Part of it is there's the emotional side of that weight loss surgery journey. And what I mean by that is in the weight loss phase of your weight loss surgery journey, your bariatric journey, you are losing weight and you are getting on the scales and they are moving down. Yes, they can stop and start. They can have different lengths of time for stopping and starting. Your scales can be going down at a different rate, yes, but you're getting that feedback from this piece of metal or plastic on the floor that we give so much power to, so much, and I say power because they can really, what that little machine says or device says can really affect how you feel. And I talk a lot about that in other podcasts. But you are getting feedback, and whether it's clothes and measurements and all of that change that's happening quite quickly in that weight loss phase, gives you that, I suppose, to keep going, and you're getting that response, that result, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to keep on going because I'm getting this result. The reality is when you get to maintenance, you hop on the scales or your clothes can be fitting a little bit tighter, and then sometimes then they drop down. Your scales go up a little bit, drop down. Maintenance is not about staying at one weight consistently for the rest of your life. It's very normal for weight to bounce up and down, and that's just life. You get to go on holidays, you put on a few kilos or pounds, and then it will come off when you get back home and get back into your zone. You have a salty meal, you hold a bit more fluid. Some people and some women hold quite a bit of fluid around that time of the month, and we need to keep that in mind, because that's not weight, that's not fat, that's not adipose tissue, that's just fluid. So in that maintenance phase, when your weight and your body's not changing anymore, your clothes are fitting the same or going slightly tighter some days, slightly down the other days, you're not getting that feedback of like that constant change. And so there's very much of a shift, and I start this with my clients in the weight loss phase of weaning ourselves off so much weighing, having other ways to measure progress and just know that we're still in our zone, focusing and keeping in touch with the habits. And I talk a lot about habits, the Weight Loss Surgery Foundation eating habits. What are the key habits? Tracking them, being focused on them. Weight is a lag measure. Weight is a result measure. What we want to do is put more of our attention and focus on those habits that keep you in your zone, that keep you maintaining, that you pick up when you're drifting off track, and how to bring yourself back on track with compassion. Talk a lot about compassion. The dieting that you've often done, many people have done, most people have done before their bariatric surgery, is not compassionate. It's not saying nice things to yourself if you go off track. But guess what? When you are compassionate with yourself, when you're kind to yourself, even when you've drifted off track, and acknowledging you are a human, it is going to happen. It's not if, sorry, it's when. That you could, with compassion, okay, I pick myself and I bring myself back. But that's a skill, that's a learn, I call it tools in your toolkit, and it's a practice, and you get better at it over time. So that's what I teach my clients. I do a lot of this work when we are in the weight loss phase and we're moving towards the maintenance phase, because it's a change in, it's being really aware that you're in a different part of your journey and changing that mindset and changing how you track that you're still in the zone and how you bring yourself back. Okay, so weight maintenance can definitely be the hardest part. It's very easy to regain weight after having bariatric surgery. When you have bariatric surgery, your body responds by the fast, significant weight loss by dropping your metabolic rate down. So before surgery, you may have been weight maintaining on, I'm making this up, 2,000 something calories per day. After surgery, you may be weight maintaining on 1,200 calories a day. What you need to take in is less. So when old habits and little grazing and snacking and a little bit of this and that comes back into your diet, a little bit of energy here, energy there, it doesn't take that much for it to start coming back on. And so there is some vigilance in some way required in the maintenance, but I call it relaxed self-monitoring. So you have things in your life that you monitor, but not tightly. And what I mean by that, I weigh myself every day, and if it goes up a little bit, I panic and all of that. We don't want that. We want relaxed self-monitoring. I keep an eye on my protein. I do tracking once a month for 3 days in a row, just to check that my protein's still in the zone. I do some measurements. I weigh myself every so often. If I'm up a little bit, I do X, Y, and Z, bring myself back into my zone. So weight maintenance is really a different mindset and skill set than often the early days. We're using a lot of the skills and knowledge that you learn in the early days, but we're really embedding that and ensuring that we're able to practice it in the long term, and it's part of our new life, your new life as a person that's had bariatric surgery. That's the first point. That's the weight maintenance can be the hardest part. The second point that I shared in my reel about what they don't tell you about weight loss surgery is that the fear of weight regain is real and is really quite stifling for many people. And this can come as quite a bit of a shock for many people when they get to this point. So in the early days, you're moving through the dietary stages, you're losing weight, and it can be that lovely honeymoon period, the sun's shining, you're feeling good, you've got everything rocking along, and your weight loss is slowing and you're moving into weight maintenance, and as things happen in life, things push you off course. You notice the scales stopping, fine, then they go up. The fear of weight regain can be terrifying for people. I use the word terrifying because I've heard it so many times over the years since working solely in the area of bariatrics, and it's really overwhelming for people because you have put so much into the decision to have surgery, then the process of getting to that point, then all the work and all of everything you've put into that post-surgery journey. And you appreciate, it's lovely to get to that point, you do really appreciate the benefits that you've got out of your bariatric surgery. So this fear is really important to know that it can come up and to acknowledge, but we don't want to stay there. And what sits under that fear is not being confident to be able to know the tools you need to know and confidence in yourself to maintain your weight. And that's why a lot of people do choose to work with me, because they want to know not only what and how to eat and refine that knowledge and skills and habits, but it's also confidence that if I go off track, I know how to bring myself back on track. And if I do notice some weight regain happening, I want to nip it in the bud and become, even more confident and capable in my bariatric journey. And that's a great place to get to. So it's not about knowing everything and being perfect and not having all the answers, because guess what? The education that most people get from their bariatric centre is not going to get you there. Bariatric centres do a wonderful job. They get people to surgery. The surgeon does the surgery, and then they support you to varying degrees after to heal, recover, to be monitored, that you're all okay, to know how to move through the dietary stages, to get to a full normal diet, and then often you are released. I call it released back into the world, advised to go to your primary care provider for monitoring and come back if there's a really big problem. It is expected that you need more support and education than that after your bariatric surgery. Overnight, your tummy changes, yes, but guess what? Your brain and your habits and the way you look at food and your body and habits that you've been doing for many, many years take time to change. Behavior change is hard. So it is really important to know that fear can come up with weight regain, but we don't want it to make you withdraw into yourself and feel like you have to do everything on your own and that other people have all the answers and you don't, because it's not the case. That is the time to say, okay, I need to know more. I need to be more confident in my journey. I need more tools in my toolkit. So that, what I just talked about, is that fear of weight regain is real. The third point I made in my reel, and there are two different reels there, in that reel that I did about what they don't tell you about weight loss surgery, is that it can be very isolating. You can feel very alone. And this is another thing that I've heard so much over the years. And it's not just about being part of groups, communities, and knowing people that have had the surgery and you can talk to them, or having a bariatric centre that you can go back to that's very welcoming and you can go back there. It's a process of really changing your life and your health that is very visible to other people. It's really, food is such a big part of our lives and our socialising, relationships, all of those things. It can feel very lonely. At the times you go out to eat with other people and feeling like you're eating different foods or different amounts and people are looking at you, not feeling like you're getting the results you would like and you feel it's really visible to other people, being around people that don't really understand what you're going through. So you can feel very alone. Communities are wonderful. The challenge is that not everyone's personality is going to make it easy to really connect with other people, but communities are wonderful. And that is the wonderful side of social media and communities, I feel, is that even if you aren't the most outgoing person and it's more challenging for you to connect with other people, sometimes just reading what other people are going through that's similar to you can really help. And I really encourage people to find places to read about other people's experiences, to connect with people where they feel comfortable and in a way that's really going to serve them when the community is supportive. And there are some great communities online. I have a free Facebook community, the Bariatric Nutrition Coach community. It's free, it's highly monitored, though we don't really need to monitor it too much. And what I mean by monitoring, it's good communities are monitored to ensure people are respectful and that questions get answered and everyone feels heard. So you want to find places where people listen and people are respectful and it makes you feel comfortable, because you aren't always going to be around people that understand exactly what you're going through, and that can feel very lonely. And the last thing we want to do if we're struggling is to withdraw into ourselves, feel like it's just you, everyone else has got everything covered, I need to do this by myself, I'm a failure, all of that. We don't want to be spiraling down into that space. We want to reach out for some support and connect and help move that spiral up so you feel better. When you feel better about yourself and you feel more supported, it's a lot easier to make actions to move you outside, move you past that struggle. So that is something to really watch out for. If you feel lonely, if you feel not understood, it's really great to connect with people and even find specialists or people to support you through that if needed. If you are in the weight loss phase after your bariatric surgery, well, listen up, as I have a wonderful resource you are going to love. And yes, it's free. It's called Supercharge Your Weight Loss Surgery Success Starter Kit. It's a 3-day mini course where I take you through the steps to supercharge your weight loss. You will become clear on what habits are taking you out of your weight loss zone and which are the key habits you personally need to foster to move back into where you want to be, to weight loss. Sound good? If yes, grab your free resource. The link is in the show notes. And the last point that I made on my reel, and this is such a big point and it's such a big topic, we could talk about it for many, many podcasts, and it's that your relationship with food does not automatically improve when you have bariatric surgery. And some people, I feel, do think this, especially in the early days after having their weight loss surgery. Their appetite drops down. They don't have that same desire to eat or drink. They don't think about food so much and they go, oh, relief. And it is wonderful to get that relief. But that is not changing your relationship with food. And the work about changing your relationship with food takes time and it takes often support. And what do I mean about relationship with food? Really, we will start properly, if I'm working with someone, really start properly working with relationship with food when people get onto a full diet and start noticing those desires to eat when they're not hungry. And that's when we can really start picking apart the desire to eat for non-hungry reasons. And that's where I do a lot of my work with clients. Are you comfortable having food around you? That's your trigger foods, and people have trigger foods that I say call your name from the cupboard. Foods that if they're around, you want to eat them. That if you get triggered by certain emotions, that you have your default is to look for something to eat, to numb that emotion, take away emotions. What role do you see food playing in your life? How do you see food and your relationship with food from childhood impacting your eating now? How are you going with the weight loss surgery foundation eating habits? What gets in the way of those habits being embedded in your life? Eating regularly, small bites, chewing well, eating slowly, not eating if you're not hungry, or eating, and that's more of an advanced topic because in the early days and medium days, you're not going to have those necessarily sensations. We need to eat regularly and roughly 2 o'clock. But what I mean is you acknowledge you don't need to eat anymore, but you still want to eat. So focusing on the weight loss surgery foundation eating habits and noticing what gets in your way to push you off course, not be able to practice those habits. And that's where the work starts of really understanding what your relationship with food is and what needs to be worked on, what needs to be observed and dug into, so to speak. There probably could be a better way of saying that, but meaning dig into it, really look at it. Where did this start? Why am I doing that? What else could I do? Working through strategies to change that behavior and change that way that we're looking at food and your body. It doesn't automatically change after having weight loss surgery. It can really go off into the shadows, your issues with your relationship with food, into the shadows in those early to medium days. And people say, can't see them, can't see it, it's not coming up in your daily life. It's gone. Unfortunately, that comes back out of the shadows when you can eat more, when you have more of an appetite and as you progress after your surgery. I never say when it comes out because it's very much different stages for different people. Is it lovely to have respite and a rest in those, so to speak, in those early to medium days? Yes, it is. But it's also important to know that your journey after weight loss surgery is a lifelong journey, and things are going to come up that are going to kind of come out of the side wings and surprise you. And just to be aware that no matter how well you're doing at this point, it's not to say, don't say to yourself, great work and I'm really doing everything I can to get the most out of this surgery, but I'm human and I'm never going to be perfect and I'm not going to expect myself to be perfect. And if you are in the absolute trenches and it's really, really tough, know that it gets better, that this is a season that you're in your bariatric journey, and support will help pull you out of those trenches. And the next time you fall in a trench, when you've got tools in your toolkit, you're going to be able to climb out of that trench yourself. That's my goal, is that my clients leave me and know how to get themselves out of that trench or that pothole. They know how to get themselves out of those spots. So just to recap, what they don't tell you about weight loss surgery, and I could do many of these podcasts on this topic, but the 4 I've covered today, that weight maintenance can be the hardest part, that the fear of weight regain is real, and it's a really powerful emotion when it comes up, and it can be a shock to people, that you can feel very alone. It can be a lonely journey sometimes. And that also that having bariatric surgery does not automatically improve your relationship with food. That is part of the harder, longer term work to do after having your surgery. But it is so worth doing. You have the rest of your life to work towards. So it's a lifelong goal. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It's been a wonderful chat today. I've really enjoyed talking about this because I know the support and feedback that I gained from the reel that I posted showed that I had really kind of nutted down some of these points succinctly. And I hope this is of value, and that's my goal. This podcast is about education. It's about helping you feel that things you're going through, or know the things you're going through, you're not alone. Because if I can sit here and talk about things through my working with so many people over the years, I really share the common challenges. You are not alone. And I think it's really important because it helps with that third point. It can help you feel like, I'm struggling with this. I know other people are struggling with this. I am not alone. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this podcast of value. I hope you find my other podcasts of value. And I love hearing feedback. I love getting reviews. And I would love you to share this podcast with anyone or everyone you feel that would find value. And in your podcast app, like Spotify and Apple and Google, if you look up the top, there are 3 little dots. And if you click on that, you can actually share the podcast episode with people. You can share it individually. If you share it on your social media, tag me and I will give you a personal shout out in my podcast. So that would be wonderful. I'd really appreciate it. It's how this podcast is going to get found by more and more people over time. So thank you so much for listening, your ears, and I really look forward to being back with you next week. Bye for now.